The Empathicary Podcast is a Mind Garden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions. It's been a while, but we are back with another Empathicary Podcast, Season 1, Episode 5. I'm Todd.
I'm Sandy.
And this is all about living as an empath or living with someone who is an empath. But it's all about dealing with what comes along with, I guess, the gift of or the curse of having empath tendencies.
You know, it's funny you say that because it is sort of a gift and a curse all at the same time. I was just before we started talking today, I was thinking about that and I was like, you know, I am so grateful that I can help people, and believe me, people to come to me for help all the time. But by the same token, there's some things about it that aren't so great either. Yeah,
and we're going to discuss some of those today a little bit. So Here we are. Season 1, Episode 5 is next of the Empathicary Podcast. We're calling it We're Back.
Tarot time. If you're listening to this podcast, the divine messages are definitely for you. Let's combine science and magic, shall we? Root cause analysis, business planning, counseling, and good old-fashioned intuitive tarot readings so we can improve your near future circumstances by addressing your present scenarios. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. For more in-depth tarot consultations, please book your readings at positivetarotwisdom.com. Infinite love and blessings for everyone.
It's the Empathicary Podcast. I did kind of that for the other podcast, but I wanted to do it again.
Did you see my face when you did it? I'm just like processing that. I'm like, what are we doing right now? Weirdo. But
I'm eating some nuts is what I'm doing.
I can see that. I see you're eating nuts.
Nuts.
You know what I eat a lot of? I don't like nuts, but I eat, although now that I'm older, I sort of will eat them if they're in something else that I like. Like if there's a few nuts in a cookie.
How can you not like nuts?
I just don't. The flavor, there's no flavor to them.
Oh my God. I have right here almonds, and they're wasabi soy almonds.
Oh, God. Ugh.
Oh my God. It's so good.
No, thanks. I'm good on that one. You know what I eat, though? I eat cheese crisps. Have you ever had those? Because those are like essentially no carbs. Have you ever had those?
Are they made of cheese or what? What are they?
Yeah, they're made of cheese. It's sort of like if you put, have you ever done this? Because I have. Have you ever put like cheese in a pan and let it melt until it gets really crispy?
Sure.
Same sort of idea is that. So you have to just watch your fat, but other than that,
the difference is, though,
they're like low carb.
The nuts will help you poop. The cheese will not.
True, but do you want to poop all the time?
Nuts aren't going to make you poop all the time. They're just going to let you poop when you want to poop.
Why are we having this conversation?
It's life.
That's true.
And there's nothing more important than having a regular stool movement.
You know, I've been talking about this all day because Dave and I were discussing Spike today.
Yeah.
And how we put him on a new food because he kind of has a sensitive stomach. And we feed him some of the gravy with the chunks of beef on his kibble. And ever since he started this new kibble food, he's been much more like, he poops more. And so I said, maybe we should just put him on the sensitive stomach canned food as well. And then, because he's doing really well with it. So I've been talking about this like all day. I've been talking about poop all day. Thanks.
Well, dogs will, depending on the quality of the dog food, your dog could poop more or less too.
Yeah, he does. He poops more, but it's very solid.
Right.
And he's in a good place right now. Because remember, about a month or so ago, maybe a little bit more, he had those issues and we were worried about him. Yeah. But he's absolutely fine. He's laying down here next to me. I'm sure at some point Dave will get home from Walmart and he'll jump up and make a noise and then we're...
Start screaming and stuff like that.
Yep. So what I wanted to bring to the table today for the Empathicary Podcast was the fact, and we mentioned on the intro, was so many people come to us for help. Yeah. That never changes. Nope. It never flipping changes. Nope. But what I find, not all the time, but there is a good portion of the people who come to me for help that I think
have empathic gifts as well.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, these are people who are going through some of the stuff that empaths go through, and they don't know how to process it, and they think it's something else. It evolves into something else because they don't know exactly what's going on. And the minute you say to them, what you're telling me and what you've told me in the past all adds up to the fact that you too may have some of these abilities.
Right.
And I think for me, a good portion of the people who come to me kind of fall into that category. I'm not saying 100%, but
Yeah.
maybe 75%, 80% of the people who come to me for assistance probably do fall into that category for me.
You get a lot of repeat people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I had like a sign on my door and I had a secretary out front who took payments as people came in, I'd be making a lot of money on the return business, you know?
You know what's funny about that is my experience is that I get a lot of strangers who talk to me, who tell me their, for lack of a better term, their life story just out of nowhere. But I can tell that as they're telling me these things, these personal things, sometimes deeply personal things, that it's because they need to talk about it to someone. And so they tell me these things. I don't get a lot of, like, it's hard to say because I do get people that I know who come to me for things. But a lot of times for me, it's the waitress where I'm having dinner or lunch. It's the lady at my doctor's appointment.
And see, for me, I don't go out of the house. So I don't have, I don't have those experiences as much as you do. I have the experience of people who meet me online, either through the podcast or the TV show or something else, or through somebody else. And that evolves, or it's people that I've known for years and years and years because they've reached out 5 years ago and they're still reaching out to me.
Yep. Yeah. It's weird because, and not that I go out that much myself.
She's out all the time. She's out partying all the time.
No, those days are gone. Those days ended maybe 2 years ago. But I will say this. It's weird because a lot of times it will happen to me at my doctor's appointments. And I have to go to my doctor's appointments, whether it's another patient or it's the lady behind the desk. I end up with this. Yeah. And it's not, those kind of situations to me aren't overbearing and they're not difficult. I mean, yes, sometimes I don't know what to say. Sometimes I can get, but by the same token, I don't think I need to say anything. I think that's just their soul, their consciousness just trying to get out what they need to get out. They need to talk to me. They don't even realize they need to talk to me, but they do. And so I let it go. I just go with the flow and, I try to slowly inch back away so that I can try to put an end to it without hurting their feelings. It has happened when we've been out at restaurants. We were geocaching last summer and we were at the grocery store, but way up on the grassy part of it. And this old man walked by and asked what we were doing. And all I had to do was answer him. And a half an hour later, he's still telling me his whole life, like everything that goes on in his life and has gone on. And so it's hard to break away from that. And Dave just shakes his head, but I end up staying there and letting them talk to me because they need to do it. And I understand that they need to do it.
I think there's a lot of lonely people too. And the one place that because of my leg and stuff, the one place that I do go to when I do go out is therapy, my physical therapy. And so I've had and I try to be nice and you try to, it's just, I don't want to say initiate that quick little bit of conversation with people just to put everybody at ease. But, like you, the receptionist, I know now that she's got relatives in San Antonio because that came up and I was able to say that I have relatives in San Antonio. But then, another patient comes out waiting for a cab and he wants to know the whole story on my knee. I went to frickin' McDonald's one day before therapy with my friend Sherry. She was taking me and I walked in, and as soon as I got my food and sat down, we were just having coffee and a little breakfast before I had to go. And the guy said, "So what kind of surgery did you have?" And I told him, he goes, "Yep, same one. As soon as you were walking in, I said to my buddy here, that guy's had the same surgery." And then I heard his whole process of his surgery and how it's going and all that. Now, the good news out of it was that I learned that, number one, I wasn't the only person who had problems sitting down on the toilet when they first had the surgery done, because it's very awkward. In McDonald's, but also found out that he's doing really well. And, the degree of bend of his leg, it's kind of a big thing that people like us talk about now. But, that whenever you go out, you put yourself, it's like having a neon sign over your head. Talk to me, to me, so that's why I stay home.
And I find that I have to be the one to end it. And that's why, because some people will talk to me forever and I have to be the one to end it. And that's hard too. That puts a lot of pressure on me too, because then I'm not even really listening to them. I'm more worried. I'm playing chess. I'm one move ahead, trying to figure out where I can make a break in the conversation to stop it, because it won't stop unless I do.
Uh-oh, Dave must be home.
Dave's home. Spike's making a noise.
Spike's alarm. The Spike's alarm clock is going off, so she's going to go ahead and get that. And if you've been listening to the Sandy and Todd cast, this has happened a couple of times, and this is where I give the play-by-play. So she has gotten from her chair. She has gotten up, opened the door, and closed it. He is now out, and I got a complete look at what she's wearing.
It's nothing. I'm wearing sweatpants and a T-shirt that says, what does it say?
I like pie.
It says, it doesn't say I like pie. Although I do, I just don't get to eat it. I'm just WTFing my way through life. That's what my shirt says.
That's true. That should be the name of this podcast.
I'm just WTFing my way through life. We should. Yeah. I think that's great. But yeah, so it's very difficult. It's a fine line you walk, because I truly think of myself as being a good person, and I do want to help people. And I know that my gifts allow me to help them. Even when I don't say a word and just let them talk, I know I'm helping them. But at some point, I have to live my own life too. So I have to get to that appointment. I have to finish my lunch or my dinner. I have to get my geocache and move on to the next. So it's tough. Sometimes it's tough, but you're right. You're 100% right that there are gifts that we have that make me feel very blessed. And there are gifts that we have that sometimes I look at as a curse. It all depends on the situation I'm in at the time.
I think it would be nice if, and the part that's kind of hard with people who are empaths, there's different types. Mm-hmm. There's different degrees.
Yeah.
And I'm not as schooled on knowing what type somebody might be or what degree they might be or what could help them as far as any kind of training or explanation or information.
Right.
So a lot for me sometimes it's just saying, hey, I think this might be what's going on with you. This might be, what you're going through. Here's what you might want to check out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we can only give them our thoughts. I mean, I will say this, you and I we're both aware of the fact that we both have abilities beyond empath. So I think that does help me in dealing with people a lot, because sometimes my claircognizance, just my clear knowing, helps me. That's why, a lot of empaths or people with other abilities tend to become counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, because it really helps them to heal. I'm a healer empath, and I'm very strong empath. And so sometimes I'm able to give people ideas that could lead them in the right direction of what they're really looking for, the peace that they're looking for. And that I'm grateful for. So, yeah, I think it really depends on your level of empath. I kind of smirk when I see people who I know for a fact are not an empath, who claim to be an empath.
Some of them not even empathetic.
Right? They don't even have empathy for anything in life. And yet they're empaths. And I'm like, you're not an empath at all. But I guess they think that you're one of the cool kids if you're an empath, which I've never considered myself to be one of the cool kids if I'm an empath. But there are people out there like that. I just have to kind of smirk at that, because if you don't even have empathy for your fellow man in the normal sense of the word, how do you really think you're an empath? If you cry during a movie, it doesn't make you an empath. You know, I mean, if you were truly an empath, you would understand the challenges of living your life as an empath. Enough said. You would understand it if you were. You would eventually figure it out in your life. That's what we're here to do. That's what we're trying to do, is educate people. I didn't know I was until, I guess, maybe 4 years ago. I had no idea what I was experiencing.
I worry about people who have empath abilities and never find out, and don't understand why they're feeling depressed or emotional or feeling pain or any of that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of people out there like that. A lot.
Yeah, I do too. You know, I spent a lot of my life, a very huge portion of my life, thinking I had some level of depression. You know, not chronic depression where it's like every day of my life, but I would call them my cycles. And I would be quiet. But I would. I'd feel okay for a little bit, and then I'd be out in the world, and and I didn't understand that it really wasn't depression. It was uncontrolled empath. It was not being able to first acknowledge the fact that I was, because I didn't know. And second of all, learning how to make things for me a little bit better, because it's not easy, right? So I do feel bad for people who don't. And that's what I think part of the reason we started this was so that we can help people who think they might be, who know they are, but don't know what to do about it. Or, you know, just for people to say, oh, I'm not alone. There are other people that go through this too. It's been a wonderful experience to meet other empaths who have the same experiences, or almost the same experiences that I have, because then I don't feel so alone in it and so confused.
If you're a listener of this podcast, but you haven't checked out the Sandy and Toddcast, you should check out the most current episode of the Sandy and Toddcast, because we also talk with Holly Hughes, and we talk about being an empath in a world where Russia's at war with Ukraine, and there is, you know, unrest in America and all that kind of stuff. We talk about how do you stop from feeling all of that?
Yeah.
And, you know, you and I have had this conversation in the last couple of weeks, because you tend, and here's the difference in our abilities. I tend to pick up on the energies and depression or sadness or issues with individuals from, you know, who knows where in the world. You pick up on a collective thing going on. Like you feel the collective of the war and the individuals there. Whereas I may know or not know somebody in a part of the world going through difficulties and pains and stuff like that. So I think that's one of the differences.
Yeah,
I'm able to look at what's going on with the Ukraine and feel sorry for it, feel bad for it, want better of the situation. But I'm able to allow it to not affect me so deeply.
Yeah, it's hard. And you're right. There's different levels, I think. This is how I have come to understand it. There's different levels of picking up on energies. So, for example, you tend to, like you said, you tend to deal a lot more on the individual basis. And it can go all the way through to the entire world, which I tend to pick up on more. I'm having a really hard time right now, especially with the animals. I am literally becoming these people, these animals, their emotions.
Animals?
Yeah. I'm picking up on all of it. And so it's very difficult for me. And a lot of people who aren't empaths will not understand this, but staying away from the TV, staying away from the news, staying away from social media, yes, it does help, but it doesn't take it completely away because you're not picking up on pictures, so to speak, per se. You're picking up on the energy, the fear, the emotions. And it's very difficult. You know, I still pick up on individuals, though. Some of the different triggers for empaths, like crowds. I'm not good in crowds. I'm really not. I will be in a crowded place as long as I have my own space. I can't have people getting too close to me. Dave and I have been at concerts before. And I mean, being in radio, being in country radio especially, we've gone to tons of concerts and had some great experiences. But I've had a few where I've actually had to leave the show because I was so overwhelmed that I felt dizzy. My blood sugar actually rose and I felt like I was going to pass out and I had to leave. I've had a couple of those. I've had instances where, you know, I'd be all excited. I'd say to Dave, let's go to this new store in blah, blah, blah town. Or let's go to this restaurant that I heard about, blah, blah, blah town. And we'd get there and I'd say, why don't we do this instead? And he'd look at me like I was literally crazy. And I would just say, I don't know why, but it just doesn't feel right to me. I don't feel right now. And it was all about just picking up on the energy and not feeling right about the energy. So there's a lot of triggers like that empaths have that maybe if you don't know you're an empath, or even if you do, you don't understand that those are actually triggers. You walk into a place and you don't feel comfortable there for no reason that you can understand or think of, you may be picking up on the energy of the other people there. So crowds are a huge trigger for me, for empaths. I have to be really careful and set my boundaries when I'm in crowded places. We just kind of hosted a fundraiser last weekend, and we made sure that not just for COVID reasons, but I always make sure that even though there's a crowd of people, it was a Chinese auction, even though there was a crowd of people sitting at the other side of the room waiting to hear if they won something, I was pretty much by myself. I had some of the Girl Scouts helping me with things, but I was pretty much by myself. I was okay with that. But to be in the middle of a crowd of people is not an easy thing for me. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not good with arguing or fighting. I hate arguing and fighting. It's like noise in my head. And it's not the literal noise, it's figurative noise in my head. I don't like that. I like routine because I can expect something out of routine. I don't like things that change. I like to know that my plans have been confirmed. Those are things that bother me because I feel off. That's all stuff. That's all energy that's getting mixed around that I'm picking up on. That wreaks havoc with me. Why are you staring at me?
I wasn't. I was just listening to you.
Oh, all right.
And thinking about, like, you know, how much of that pertains to me, and a lot of it does, you know.
It's hard. Feeling rushed. This is another one. This is an interesting one because I like to be scheduled. So Dave used to look at me like I was a little crazy too, but if we go on vacation somewhere, I would have to say, okay, in the morning we're doing this. In the afternoon, we're going to do this. In the evening, weeks beforehand, you make fun of me about this all the time. But that's my way of keeping order and keeping the energy in line. I don't want to feel rushed. I want to know that everything that I want to do has plenty of time to do it. So that's just more scrambled energy for me if I feel like I'm rushing around doing something.
Right.
You know? So it's stuff that you wouldn't expect, but it all is a trigger for an empath because I like things clean. I like things black and white for the most part. I'm not always good with jumbled. I like clean lines, even in decorating. I like things to be clean lines, nothing crazy going on. It's just how I am.
For me, having the order or the schedule allows me to have a better perspective on when I am feeling off, when I am feeling depressed, when I am feeling crazy. Mm-hmm. Is it mine or is it somebody else's? If my life is okay and I've got things in line, then I know that it's not me. Yeah.
That's an amazing point. That is an amazing point because you're right. Because it's so important to try to, they call it compartmentalizing an acknowledgement, but it's true. Like sometimes I'll feel like I'll have you've been through this many times with me. I'll just wake up in the morning and I'll feel off and I'll feel weird and I'll feel stressed, but there's absolutely no reason for me to be feeling those ways, you know? And so that's when I can say, okay, this can't be me. This has to be something else I'm picking up on. It has to be because I'm okay. And recognizing that you're okay as an empath is so huge in learning how to deal with whatever comes your way.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. It's crazy. And now I'm starting to, we talked with Holly about this term leveling up, sort of leveling up in your consciousness and leveling up in your understanding. And in some cases, leveling up in the abilities that you had. And I have been talking about this for a while, that there are some things that I can't do that I'm okay with not being able to do. I see people with my mind's eye, and that's okay. But as far as interacting with people, like I feel like I see residual, because the things that I see in my mind's eye are not interactive people. They're the residuals. I see visions of things that have happened or people that were involved in a location I'm at. But I have never seen someone that I would actually interact with, right? And I'm okay with that because I just don't think that at this point I would be ready for that. However, I've started to realize that some of these abilities are starting to take on more shape, more form lately. Especially, I've had a couple times now, I've had visions of things, dream. I had one vision that was right before you got hurt. And then I had a dream.
What was the vision, by the way?
I saw these. Okay, so I think we talked about that you found one of your ancestral homes and you took a ride out there, and some of your ancestors were actually buried in a cemetery not far from the house. So I said, I saw these in my mind. I saw black birds all up in like a tree. It was really weird. And I said, just be looking for, I assumed it was at the cemetery. I said, just be looking at the cemetery, see if you see any black birds. I had no idea what it meant. And so you said, no, I didn't see any black birds. And sometimes in my journey, I take things very literally because I'm not well-versed on it yet. I don't really understand it yet. I'm still trying to figure these things out, and that some of it is imagery and some of it is figurative. And so I just assumed they were at the cemetery. You said you were going to the cemetery. And then like the next day, or was it 2 days later?
Couple. Yep.
Yeah, you fall down the stairs and you do all this damage to your knee. And I remembered what I said, so I looked it up. And the black birds, like in the visions and stuff, can symbolize like bad juju, bad luck, negative energy. And
she looks it up after I fall, not before, to say, hey, you know what? Just be careful, Todd, because
I know, but I didn't know any of that. All I saw were black birds. I just assumed they were going to be at the cemetery. And so then I look all this up and I'm like, what if, and again, not being confident in this because this is something that is just starting to emerge. I said, what if this was a precursor to what happened to you? So we went back and forth on it. We just kind of put it to the side because there's no way of knowing for sure. But in my heart, I kind of felt like it probably was. And then a few weeks ago, there's a rescue down in Georgia that had rescued these little teeny tiny babies. And
dogs, just so you know,
baby dogs, yeah,
dog
puppies,
rescue.
These little teeny tiny ones, and they're called Rescue Ranch. Check them out on Facebook. They are just amazing. It's 2 women who run the rescue, and they are just absolutely amazing women. And I'm so humbled by them and their work. And so these were baby chihuahuas, and one of them, the little boy, there's 2 girl puppies and there was a little boy puppy. And I had this dream one night that he just suddenly, he wasn't doing as well as the others, but he was at the early stage holding his own. And I had this horrible little 10-second dream where he crashed. Stanley crashed. And I woke up the next morning and thankfully he was okay. And then the other day he did pass. And I think that he had just so many things wrong with him. The little girls are doing great. They're flourishing. But he had a lot of issues. But it just made me realize that maybe I'm starting to have more of these precognizant things happening to me. And I still don't know how I feel about that. Because what's happening is not only am I having these things happen, but then there's all these emotions, empathic emotions that go along with the fallout from them. And it's really tough. It's been really tough for me. It's bothered me a lot. But I think that I have leveled up. And so that's been very interesting for me as well. So something I didn't even understand even happened until the other night when we talked to Holly about it. I didn't understand what leveling up really meant. So
if this was, say, the 1800s early, and you had the emotional reaction as you've had the last several weeks to everything going on, they'd have locked you up.
Yeah, I would have been in the insane asylum. I really would have. They locked women up for PMS.
I know. We've talked about that many times.
I know. It's crazy,
but
I would have been.
I'll just say,
Oh, be quiet, you.
sometimes the good old days were the good old days,
Yeah. But you know what? But I don't want to make this sound like it's all doom and gloom and horrible, because it's not. Because one of my goals in life, one of my journeys, one of my paths on this journey is to try and help as much as I can. And if it means understanding this stuff, I'm not the kind of person that I would ever give readings. That's just not who I am. I think it's wonderful that some people do give readings. That's not who I am. Mine is very, very personal to me and to the people in my very tiny circle that I love, and also to the energies on the other side who maybe I can help. So I just don't want it to seem all doom and gloom. There's a lot of hard work involved in living as an empath, living with abilities, but there's also a lot of rewards in it. So you just gotta keep going, and you gotta try and work hard to figure it out.
Absolutely. All right.
Are you done with your nuts?
No, there's a whole bag of nuts here. I'm done with eating them now, though. Yeah, so I think that's a good podcast. I think that we're going to hopefully do these a little bit more often. But certainly, if you don't know about the Sandy and Toddcast, we also talk about a lot of this kind of stuff on the Sandy and Toddcast.
Right.
But we also go in a lot of other directions, too. So...
Yeah, we talk about just about anything on the Sandy and Toddcast. We talk about everything from woo-woo, paranormal, crypto. We talk about, what we had for dinner last night. It's sort of like a hodgepodge of everything and anything that comes to our minds, which is what I love about us. But this is for people who are empaths or who live with empaths so that they can understand a little bit better what it's really like. And please, if anybody has questions or has any topic requests, we'd love to talk about them.
Sure.
We'd
or
love
stories
to get
of
some
your
guests
own.
on. Stories of your own.
Yeah.
If you'd like to come on or just send us some information. We do have a Facebook page, the Empathic Carry Podcast, or you can check out our Sandy and Toddcast page on Facebook. Send us a message. Let us know that you have a story, or give us some support, give us some thumbs up, or maybe you have an idea for a topic. Let us know. We're open. You know that. We're always open to hearing things.
Well, sounds good. And probably in another 5 or 6 months, we'll have another episode. So look forward to that.
We have so much going on in life, but it's so important to keep this going because I think it does help. I really do.
All right. For the Empathic Carry Podcast, until we talk to you next time, bye.
Bye.